Black isn't a color. It's the confession that all colors have already died. Uniform Black, Soul Mat. Chapter 1. Fashion Diagnosis. Uniforms are humanity's most comfortable lie. People don't wear them to dress themselves, but to disappear. Fabrics press souls into templates, as if humans were cookie cutters with pulse. Colors flatter, deceive, whitewash. Black, however, is honest. It camouflages nothing. It buries everything. Those who wear black confess that colors have long since died. At Nevermore, students claim the uniform symbolizes community. I see only a textile graveyard. Every button a tombstone, every seam a gaping scar. Those who love uniforms also love chains, and chains are nothing more than portable gravestones. I'm not here to be the same. I'm here to remain different, while reminding everyone that normalcy is the real disease. The psychology of uniform adoption reveals fascinating insights into human pack behavior. Individuals surrender personal expression for the comfort of group belonging, trading authenticity for acceptance without recognizing the transaction's terms. This process begins early, conditioning children to associate clothing with identity, while simultaneously teaching them that individual identity threatens social stability. The result? Adults who genuinely believe that fabric choices represent meaningful rebellion, while remaining completely enslaved to collective approval. Nevermore's uniform policy operates under the pretense of equality, suggesting that identical clothing eliminates social hierarchies. This demonstrates either remarkable naivety or deliberate deception about human nature's fundamental characteristics. Hierarchies don't disappear when surface differences are eliminated. They simply shift to subtler markers that require greater sophistication to recognize and exploit. The uniform doesn't create equality. It creates a more refined class system based on how one wears conformity, rather than what one wears instead of it. My resistance to this system isn't aesthetic preference, but philosophical necessity. To accept the uniform would be to participate in the collective fiction that individual identity can be temporarily suspended for group benefit, without permanent psychological damage. Chapter 2. Uniform Inventory. I examined the uniform like others inspect a corpse. Fabric. Cheap, scratchy, saturated with sweat. A textile grave marker. Scent. Chemicals and bodies. Both remind me of laboratories where one either learns or dies. Crest. An embroidered animal meant to suggest courage. In truth, it resembles a brand. Seams. Draw lines like scars that never heal. My classmates wear them with pride. I wonder if they suspect that pride is one of the most convenient diseases. You die from it slowly, but certainly. When I see them, I'm reminded of rows of soldiers marching in lockstep, unaware that the ground has long since given way beneath their feet. I tried on the uniform experimentally, stood before the mirror and recognized it fits. That was the problem. Clothing that fits is dangerous. It makes you believe you're accepted. I accept myself by rejecting everything else. The mirror reflected someone I didn't recognize, a version of myself that had surrendered to institutional expectations. The image was disturbing not because it looked wrong, but because it looked right. The uniform transformed me into exactly what Nevermore expected. a compliant student grateful for the privilege of conformity. This transformation revealed the uniform's true function. It doesn't create community through shared identity. It eliminates individual identity through shared submission. Every student who puts on the uniform agrees to temporary personality death in exchange for institutional approval. The fabric itself felt like a shroud, designed to bury authentic self-expression beneath layers of institutional wool. The weight was psychological as much as physical, carrying the accumulated surrender of every student who had worn similar uniforms before me. I removed it immediately and returned to black. Not as rebellion, but as restoration of psychological integrity. Chapter 3: The Closet Experiment. I left the closet door open. Others do this to keep monsters away. I did it to invite one in. The uniforms rustled. I heard them whisper together like conspirators planning mutiny. A button clinked, as if it had decided to become an eye. The fabric moved without wind. Many believe clothing is passive. But clothing collects. It absorbs sweat, tears, skin particles, blood traces. Every uniform is a diary worn on the body, only more honest, because it doesn't lie. I lay in bed with eyes open for hours, staring into the open closet. Eventually, I saw the uniform like a figure, slightly leaning forward as if wanting to speak. Perhaps it was only my mind. Perhaps it was truth finally finding a voice. Fabrics scream more quietly, but longer. The experiment revealed something unsettling about the relationship between clothing and consciousness. Objects that spend intimate contact with human bodies absorb more than physical residue. They accumulate psychic impressions, emotional residue, fragments of the personalities that inhabited them. The uniforms in my closet carried traces of their previous wearers: academic anxieties, social desperations, romantic disappointments, family pressures. Each garment was an archaeological record of adolescent suffering, preserved in cotton and wool. This explained the discomfort I felt when wearing institutional clothing. It wasn't just the physical restriction of movement, but the psychological weight of inherited neuroses from dozens of previous occupants. Black clothing, by contrast, seemed to absorb rather than accumulate. It pulled negative energy inward, neutralizing rather than preserving it. Wearing black felt like emotional armor against the psychic contamination that permeated the school environment. The rustling sounds continued throughout the night, creating an auditory backdrop that resembled whispered conversations in a language I couldn't quite understand, but somehow recognized. By morning, I had decided that the open closet experiment had provided sufficient data about textile psychology to warrant permanent implementation. Chapter 4: Family versus Fashion. My family is free from these problems. Morticia wears elegance like a guillotine. Beautiful, deadly, inevitable. Her dresses aren't fashion but verdicts. Gomez wears suits that aren't fabrics but vows. Every thread swears loyalty. Pugsley wears what burns, not accidentally but on principle. I wear black, not because it suits me, but because it has dug the grave for all colors. We Addamses don't disguise ourselves, we embody. Fashion is for others. Clothing is for those afraid to be naked themselves. We have no fear. We have knives. The distinction between Addams family clothing choices and conventional fashion reflects deeper philosophical differences about the relationship between appearance and identity. Most people use clothing to project desired images rather than express authentic selves, creating elaborate deceptions that ultimately trap them in performative cycles. Morticia's wardrobe consists entirely of variations on a single theme: death as beauty, beauty as death. This consistency eliminates the daily identity crisis that plagues most humans, who must choose between dozens of personality options hanging in their closets. Gomez approaches clothing as extension of character rather than alteration of it. His suits don't change his personality, they amplify it. The result is authentic expression rather than manufactured image. Pugsley's relationship with combustible materials demonstrates the most honest approach to fashion. Clothing as tool rather than identity marker. His garments serve functional purposes: fuel for explosions, kindling for fires, raw materials for pyrotechnical experiments, without pretending to represent anything beyond utility. My commitment to black operates on similar principles. The color doesn't express my mood or signal my personality. It eliminates the distraction of chromatic choice while providing optimal psychological camouflage in a world that expects emotional transparency. This approach liberates considerable mental energy that most people waste on appearance-related decision-making. Instead of spending time coordinating colors and styles, I can focus on more important matters, like documenting human weakness and planning educational interventions. Chapter 5. Jericho Excursion. Jericho held a church bazaar. People sold used clothing with labels: faith, hope, love. If hope and love are so cheap, the market has long since collapsed. I entered a second-hand store. Between dolls and dresses stood a mannequin. Its head turned as I passed. Probably poorly constructed. Or possessed. In both cases, uninteresting. As long as it doesn't speak. A dress in the back rack smelled of mold and fear. The saleswoman said, "It was never worn." I corrected her. It was worn often. By someone who's already dead. She laughed nervously. Humans often laugh when truth stings. On the way back through the park, I noticed an old woman clutching her clothes tighter, as if the fabric would protect her from the world. I wished her luck. Fabrics tear faster than bones. The second-hand market provides fascinating insights into the life cycle of human self-deception. Items that once represented identity investment, carefully selected, proudly worn, emotionally significant, become anonymous commodities once their owners no longer need them to maintain social facades. The pricing mechanisms reveal society's actual values beneath stated preferences. Wedding dresses that cost thousands new sell for dozens used, suggesting that the economic value was always illusory, tied to ritual performance rather than practical utility. Most interesting were the garments that retained psychic impressions from their previous owners. Certain items carried tangible sadness, others radiated anxiety or desperation. The sensitive shopper could read the emotional history of clothing like archaeological evidence of psychological states. The mannequin's movement wasn't supernatural. It was mechanical failure creating the appearance of autonomous motion. But the effect was appropriate for the environment. Artificial humans displaying artificial identities for purchase by authentic humans seeking to become artificial themselves. The old woman in the park understood something most people miss about clothing's protective function. She wasn't clutching fabric against weather. She was holding together a constructed identity that felt increasingly fragile as time eroded the illusions that supported it. Her instinct was correct, though her method was doomed. Fabric offers no protection against existential dissolution. Only authentic self-knowledge provides armor against the world's assault on individual identity. Chapter 6: Fabric and Soul. Thesis: Fabric absorbs fear. Every thread is an archive. I dripped blood onto fabric. The weave tightened as if wanting to keep the blood. I added sweat stolen from a classmate. Result: the fabric darkened. I noted: clothing is storage. People don't wear clothing. Clothing wears people. Later, I placed the uniform on the heater. The smell of burned dust mixed with the sickly aroma of fear. I called it the perfume of truth. No designer will ever sell it. It would be too honest. The experiment confirmed my hypothesis about textile psychology. Fabrics function as emotional recording devices, preserving traces of every psychological state experienced while wearing them. This explains the discomfort many people feel when wearing used clothing. They're absorbing residual emotions from previous owners. The blood absorption pattern revealed something more disturbing. The fabric didn't just passively receive the blood. It actively drew it deeper into the weave, as if feeding on the organic material. This suggested that clothing might have parasitic relationships with their wearers, gradually consuming life essence while appearing to provide protection. The heat experiment produced unexpected results. Instead of simply burning, the uniform released complex chemical signatures that included not just textile components but organic compounds that shouldn't have been present in factory-made clothing. These additional elements could only have come from human contact: skin cells, hair follicles, sebaceous secretions. Most significantly, the smell produced wasn't just unpleasant. It was psychologically disturbing in ways that suggested the release of preserved emotional states along with physical compounds. The uniform had been storing more than sweat and dead skin. It had been accumulating psychological residue from every student who had worn it. This discovery explained why I felt increasingly uncomfortable each time I tried on institutional clothing. I wasn't just wearing fabric. I was absorbing the accumulated anxieties, depressions, and neuroses of dozens of previous wearers. The implications were staggering. If clothing could preserve and transmit psychological states, then fashion industry could be understood as a vast network for distributing mental illness through shared garments. Chapter 7: The Cursed Uniform. A rumor circulated about a uniform no one could wear for long. Students complained of tightness, breathlessness, nightmares. I decided to try it myself. Effect: it didn't press on my chest, but on my thinking. I dreamed faces without eyes, voices without bodies. They said, "Equality is suffocation." In the morning, I noted, "No curse, only truth. Uniforms kill individuality. Some feel it, most don't. I do." I hung it back in the closet. It rustled as if laughing. The so-called cursed uniform was simply more concentrated in its psychological effects than standard institutional clothing. Rather than gradually eroding individual identity over months or years, it accelerated the process to the point where victims could consciously recognize what was happening to them. The physical symptoms, tightness, breathlessness, were psychosomatic responses to identity compression. The uniform wasn't physically constricting, it was psychologically suffocating, triggering claustrophobic responses in individuals whose authentic selves were being systematically eliminated. The dreams provided the most revealing data. Faces without eyes suggested vision without insight, the ability to see without understanding, to observe without comprehending. Voices without bodies indicated communication without authenticity, words spoken without genuine speakers behind them. The message, "Equality is suffocation," represented the uniform's true function revealed through subconscious processing. Institutional equality doesn't elevate everyone to the same level. It reduces everyone to the same limitations, creating uniformity through systematic diminishment rather than collective enhancement. My tolerance for the uniform's effects stemmed from pre-existing resistance to identity manipulation. Years of maintaining individual authenticity against social pressure had created psychological immunity to conformity-inducing influences. The rustling sound when I returned the uniform to the closet wasn't supernatural. It was fabric settling back into its preferred configuration, but the timing created an impression of satisfaction, as if the uniform had accomplished its purpose of demonstrating its power, even to someone resistant to its effects. Chapter 8. The Mannequin. I kidnapped the store Mannequin. It stood in my room, on Enid's side. Each night I watched to see if it moved. At night its joints creaked. I carved a cross into its arm. The next morning the line was deeper. Either woodworks or guilt. Both useful. I put the uniform on the Mannequin. It looked more alive. Enid called it creepy. I call it honest. The Mannequin has stayed. Sometimes it seems to breathe. Maybe it's just the woodworking, or the uniform that has learned to carry a soul. The Mannequin acquisition served multiple experimental purposes. Testing Enid's tolerance for unusual roommate behavior, creating a display model for uniform observation, and establishing a control subject for studying clothing's effects on identity. Positioning it on Enid's side of the room provided psychological pressure, while maintaining plausible deniability about territorial violations. The Mannequin occupied her space without technically crossing my established boundary, creating cognitive dissonance about property rights and personal comfort. The joint creaking occurred due to temperature fluctuations, causing expansion and contraction in the wooden frame. But the timing, consistently during night hours when psychological defenses were lowest, created an audio backdrop that enhanced the Mannequin's psychological impact on both occupants of the room. The cross carving deepened, not through supernatural intervention, but through natural wood movement, responding to humidity changes. However, the visual effect suggested that the Mannequin was somehow processing or responding to the marking, creating an impression of consciousness where none existed. Dressing the Mannequin in the uniform transformed it from obviously artificial display object to uncannily lifelike figure. The clothing provided visual cues that triggered human pattern recognition systems, making observers perceive humanity where only shaped wood existed. Enid's creepy assessment was accurate from her perspective. The Mannequin disrupted normal expectations about inanimate objects, while suggesting uncomfortable possibilities about the relationship between clothing and identity. My honest characterization reflected deeper understanding. The mannequin demonstrated what humans become when they surrender individual identity to institutional conformity. Wooden frameworks wearing assigned roles, lacking authentic consciousness but convincingly performing humanity. Chapter 9. Conclusion. Colors are masks. Black is burial. Uniforms make people equal. Black makes them finally honest. I don't wear black because it suits me. I wear it because it has already buried all colors. The choice of black represents more than aesthetic preference. It constitutes philosophical statement about the relationship between appearance and truth. While colors create illusions of variety and choice, black acknowledges that underneath superficial differences, human experiences share fundamental similarities: birth, suffering, death. This recognition doesn't produce despair but clarity. Accepting life's essential darkness eliminates the energy wasted on maintaining cheerful illusions, while providing solid foundation for authentic existence. My commitment to monochromatic clothing serves practical purposes beyond symbolic expression. It eliminates decision fatigue, reduces laundry complexity, and creates consistent visual presentation that people learn to associate with my personality rather than my mood. More importantly, it signals to others that I don't participate in the conventional social games that rely on appearance manipulation for competitive advantage. This both attracts individuals who appreciate authenticity and repels those who require constant performance from their social contacts. The uniform question at Nevermore remains unresolved. I will continue wearing black, not as rebellion against institutional authority, but as commitment to personal authenticity that transcends institutional expectations. Whether this creates conflict with administrative policies is irrelevant to its psychological necessity. Some principles are worth defending regardless of consequences, and individual identity ranks among the most important. The mannequin will remain in place as reminder that humans have choice between authentic existence and wooden performance of assigned roles. Most choose wood. I choose flesh, blood, and the honest darkness that contains both. Daily aphorism. Black isn't a color. It's the confession that all colors have already died. Final entry. Note: fabric lies. Skin tells truth. Black skin tells the most truth of all. The darkness outside my window tonight seems particularly welcoming, offering shelter from the chromatic assault of daytime illusions. In darkness, all colors become equal through elimination, the most honest equality possible.
Ah. I trust you enjoyed this glimpse into a most curious diary. If so, leave behind a small token of your delight with a like, and do consider joining our circle by subscribing. And remember, ring the little bell, and you shall be the very first to know when another diary or a fresh entry emerges from the shadows. And if a whisper stirs in your mind, a thought, a riddle, perhaps a name of someone whose secrets you would dare to uncover, leave it for me below. I read them one by one. And who knows, your wish may guide my hand to the very next diary I choose from my collection.